The rain had been relentless for 3 days straight, turning the normally dusty trails of Colorado territory into treacherous mud rivers. Lucinda Hargrove clung desperately to her horse's reins as the frightened animal slid down the muddy embankment, sending them both tumbling into the swollen creek below. The cold water shocked her system as she fought against the current, her sodden skirts weighing her down like anchors in the murky depths. April 1878 had proven itself a cruel month. 3 weeks ago, Lucinda had buried her father after a bout of pneumonia took him swiftly. Now, attempting to reach her aunt's home in Silver Creek, she found herself fighting for her own life as the creek's waters pulled at her limbs. With a desperate lunge, she grabbed at a fallen tree branch extending into the water. Her fingers found purchase on the rough bark, and she dragged herself toward the shore, inch by painful inch. Her horse had managed to scramble up the opposite bank and now stood nervously pawing the ground, too far for her to reach. Exhausted, Lucinda collapsed on the muddy bank, her once fine blue traveling dress now a sodden brown mess plastered to her trembling body. Her long chestnut hair hung in dripping tangles around her face, and mud caked her hands and face. She pushed herself to her knees, trying to assess her situation when she heard the rhythmic thud of approaching hoofbeats. "Hello there. You all right, madam?" A deep voice called. Lucinda raised her head, squinting through the mud and wet hair plastered to her face. A tall figure on horseback approached, the silhouette unmistakably that of a cowboy, broad-shouldered and topped with a wide-brimmed hat. As he drew closer, she could make out more details. A strong jawline shadowed with several days' growth of beard, keen eyes that seemed to assess her situation immediately, and capable hands that handled the reins of his magnificent bay stallion with easy confidence. He dismounted in one fluid motion, his spurs jingling as his boots hit the ground. "Madam, you hurt." His voice carried concern as he approached cautiously, leading his horse. I'm quite all right," Lucinda managed, though her chattering teeth betrayed her. "Just a bit wet and, well, muddy." The cowboy's expression changed then, his eyes widening slightly as he took in her face beneath the mud. A slow smile spread across his features, transforming his weathered face. "Well," he said, removing his hat and revealing thick dark hair with touches of gray at the temples, "you may be covered in mud, but you look like the rest of my life to me." Lucinda blinked, certain she had misheard him. "I beg your pardon." The cowboy seemed momentarily embarrassed, as if the words had escaped without permission. "Forgive me, madam, that was mighty forward. The name's Gabriel Wright. Most folks call me Gabe, and it seems to me you could use some help." Lucinda attempted to stand, but her legs wobbled beneath her. Gabriel was at her side in an instant, his strong arm supporting her elbow. "Thank you, Mr. Wright. I'm Lucinda Hargrove, my horse." She gestured helplessly across the creek where her mount still stood. "Don't you worry about that, Miss Hargrove. We'll get your horse. But first, let's get you somewhere dry." He removed his coat and draped it around her shoulders, the warmth and weight of it immediately comforting. "My aunt's home, Silver Creek. I was trying to reach it when the storm worsened," Lucinda explained, her teeth still chattering. Gabriel nodded. "Martha Hargrove's place. I know it well. It's still a good 5 miles from here." He glanced at the darkening sky. "And we've got more rain coming. My cabin's just over that ridge, not more than half a mile. We can wait out the storm there, and I'll get you to your aunt's tomorrow." Lucinda hesitated, propriety warring with practicality. To go alone to a stranger's cabin would be scandalous, but the alternative seemed increasingly dangerous as thunder rumbled in the distance. "I promise you'll be safe, Miss Hargrove," Gabriel said, seeming to read her thoughts. "I may be a bit rough around the edges, but my mother raised me right." Something in his steady gaze reassured her. "Very well, Mr. Wright, I accept your offer of shelter." With surprising gentleness, he helped her onto his horse. "I'll lead us on foot. And don't worry about your mount, he knows his way around these parts. He'll either find his way home or we'll fetch him tomorrow." As Gabriel led them toward his cabin, Lucinda found herself studying his broad shoulders and the confident way he moved through the difficult terrain. Despite her predicament, she felt oddly secure in his presence. "Been in these parts long, Miss Hargrove?" he asked, glancing back at her. "No, I've just arrived from Boston. My father." Her voice caught. My father passed 3 weeks ago. I have nowhere else to go but to my aunt's. Gabriel's expression softened. I'm sorry for your loss. It's a hard thing losing family. You speak as though from experience, Lucinda observed. Lost my pa in the war, my ma 5 years back. He was silent for a moment before adding, it changes a person. Yes, Lucinda agreed softly. It does. They crested the ridge, and Gabriel's cabin came into view, a sturdy log structure with smoke curling from the stone chimney. A covered porch wrapped around the front, and nearby stood a small barn and corral. It was humble but well-maintained, speaking to its owner's character. It's not much, Gabriel said, almost apologetically, but it's dry and warm. It looks wonderful, Lucinda said sincerely, relief flooding her at the sight of shelter. Once inside, Gabriel efficiently built up the fire while Lucinda stood dripping on the plank floor, unsure what to do with herself. The cabin's interior was surprisingly tidy, with a main room containing a table, chairs, and a stone fireplace. A doorway led to what she presumed was a bedroom, and simple but clean curtains hung at the windows. I've got some clothes you can change into, Gabriel said, disappearing into the bedroom. He returned with a flannel shirt and trousers. They'll be too big, but they're dry. You can change in there. He nodded toward the bedroom. I'll make us something hot to drink. Lucinda accepted the clothes with murmured thanks and retreated to the small bedroom. It contained a neatly made bed with a colorful quilt and a chest of drawers. A small mirror hung on one wall, and Lucinda caught sight of her reflection with a gasp. She truly was a sight. Mud streaked across her face, her hair a tangled mess, her dress ruined beyond repair. How could that man have looked at her and said what he did? The memory of his words, "You look like the rest of my life," brought unexpected warmth to her cheeks. Surely it had been a jest, or simply a kind word to a distressed woman. And yet, the way he had looked at her. She shook off the foolish thoughts and changed quickly, rolling up the sleeves and pant legs of Gabriel's clothing. They smelled of soap and the outdoors, and despite their size, felt comforting against her skin. When she emerged, Gabriel had a pot of coffee brewing and was slicing bread at the table. He glanced up, and something flickered in his eyes before he quickly looked away. Feel better? He asked, focusing intently on the bread. Much, thank you. Lucinda touched her tangled hair self-consciously. Though I must look a fright. Gabriel poured coffee into a tin cup and handed it to her. You look fine, just fine. He cleared his throat. There's a comb on the shelf there if you'd like to use it. As Lucinda worked the tangles from her hair, Gabriel prepared a simple meal of bread, dried beef, and canned peaches. The coffee and food revived her spirits, and she found herself relaxing in the cowboy's presence. He was a man of few words, but those he spoke were thoughtful and direct. Have you lived here long, Mr. Wright? She asked as they ate. Going on 8 years now. Came west after the war, worked cattle drives for a spell, then saved enough to buy this place. It's small, but the grazing's good, and I've built up a decent herd. He took a sip of coffee. Not what you're used to in Boston, I expect. Lucinda thought of her father's townhouse with its formal parlor and servants. No, but there's an honesty to it that I appreciate. Boston society can be suffocating at times. Gabriel studied her with interest. That why you came west? Looking for something different? Not exactly. After father died, I discovered his finances were not what I had believed. The house, the business, everything had to be sold to cover his debts. She looked down at her coffee. My aunt was kind enough to offer me a home, at least until I can find a teaching position. You're a teacher. I was educated to be one, though I've never actually taught. Father thought it prudent that I have a skill, even if he hoped I would make a good marriage instead. She smiled ruefully. Now it seems that skill may be my salvation. Gabriel nodded thoughtfully. Silver Creek's growing. They might be looking for a teacher come fall. Outside, the rain intensified, drumming on the cabin's roof. Gabriel rose to add more wood to the fire, and Lucinda watched the firelight play across his features. He was older than she had first thought, perhaps in his mid-30s, with lines at the corners of his eyes that deepened when he smiled. There was a quiet strength about him that she found reassuring. Would you tell me about your ranch, Mr. Wright? She asked, genuinely curious. His face brightened as he described his land and cattle, his plans for expansion. the challenges and rewards of his chosen life. Lucinda found herself drawn into his world, so different from her own, yet somehow compelling. "I'm boring you with all this ranch talk," he said suddenly, seeming embarrassed. "Not at all," Lucinda assured him. "It's fascinating. You've built something real here, something that's truly yours." "That's admirable." A comfortable silence fell between them, broken only by the crackling fire and the persistent rain. Lucinda stifled a yawn behind her hand. "You're exhausted," Gabriel observed. "Take the bed, I'll sleep out here by the fire." "I couldn't possibly displace you. It's no trouble. I've slept in worse places." His tone brooked no argument. Too tired to protest further, Lucinda thanked him and retreated to the bedroom. As she slipped beneath the quilt, she could hear Gabriel moving quietly in the other room. Despite the strangeness of her situation, she felt oddly safe. Her last thought before drifting off was of the peculiar cowboy and his unexpected words that had stirred something inside her. The storm raged through the night, but Lucinda slept soundly. She woke to sunlight streaming through the small window and the aroma of coffee and frying bacon. For a moment, disoriented, she couldn't remember where she was. Then the events of the previous day came flooding back, and she sat up quickly. She ran her fingers through her hair, wishing for a proper hairbrush and her valise, which had been strapped to her horse. Gabriel's clothes were comfortable but hardly appropriate. Still, she had little choice. She folded the quilt neatly before leaving the bedroom. Gabriel stood at the small cookstove, his back to her. He'd changed into a fresh shirt, and his hair was damp, suggesting he'd already been outside. "Good morning," she said softly. He turned, and that same expression she'd noticed yesterday, a mixture of surprise and something else she couldn't quite name, crossed his face before he composed himself. "Morning, Miss Hargrove. Sleep well. Better than I expected, thank you." She gestured to her borrowed clothes. "I'm afraid I'm not very presentable." Gabriel's mouth quirked. "You look just fine to me. Better than yesterday, though I meant what I said then too." Before Lucinda could respond to this puzzling statement, he continued, "I've got breakfast nearly ready. And good news, I found your horse this morning. He wandered down to my creek. Your bags are still attached, though they got a bit wet." "Oh, that's wonderful news. Thank you for retrieving him." They ate breakfast together, and Lucinda found herself enjoying Gabriel's company. He was knowledgeable about the area and offered advice about Silver Creek and its inhabitants. "Your aunt's well respected there," he told her. "Runs the general store since your uncle passed. She's fair in her dealings, which counts for a lot out here." "I haven't seen her since I was a child," Lucinda admitted. "We corresponded regularly, but," she shrugged, "I hope she doesn't find me a burden." "Can't imagine anyone finding you a burden, Miss Hargrove," Gabriel said quietly. After breakfast, Lucinda changed back into her own clothes, which Gabriel had hung near the fire to dry overnight. Her traveling dress was stained beyond recovery, but her valise contained a simpler day dress that had remained mostly dry. She felt more herself once properly attired, though a part of her missed the comfortable weight of Gabriel's flannel shirt. When she emerged from the bedroom, Gabriel was outside preparing the horses. The day was clear and bright, the storm having blown itself out overnight. Water droplets sparkled on every surface, and the air smelled fresh and clean. "Ready to head to Silver Creek?" Gabriel asked, helping her mount her horse. "Yes, thank you. I can't express enough gratitude for your assistance, Mr. Wright." "Just doing what anyone would," he said, swinging into his own saddle. They rode side by side through rolling grassland dotted with wildflowers and occasional stands of pine. Gabriel pointed out landmarks and shared stories of the area's history. Lucinda found herself laughing at his dry wit and admiring his evident love for the land. "It's beautiful here," she said as they paused at the top of a rise. The valley spread before them. "Different from what I'm used to, but beautiful in its own way." "Takes some getting used to," Gabriel agreed. "The open spaces can be unsettling at first, but then one day you realize you'd feel trapped anywhere else." "Is that how it was for you? Coming from, where was it you grew up?" "Pennsylvania." "And yes, that's exactly how it was. Came west thinking I'd work a few cattle drives, make some money, then head back east. But this land." He gestured to the vista before them. "It gets in your blood. As they continued their journey, Lucinda found herself wondering what her life might be like here. She had come west out of necessity, not choice, but perhaps there was opportunity in this new beginning. They reached Silver Creek by midday. The town was larger than Lucinda had expected, a proper main street lined with businesses, including her aunt's general store with Hargrove Mercantile painted across its facade. Several side streets held neat houses, a church, and what appeared to be a schoolhouse. Gabriel led her to the store, where a bell jingled as they entered. A woman looked up from behind the counter, gray-haired and spectacled, with Lucinda's father's eyes. "Aunt Martha," Lucinda said hesitantly. Martha Hargrove's face lit up. "Lucinda, oh my dear, we were so worried. When you didn't arrive yesterday, I feared the worst with that storm." She hurried around the counter to embrace Lucinda, then stepped back to look at her. "You're safe, thank goodness, and I see Gabe Wright brought you in. Thank you, Gabe." Gabriel tipped his hat. "Miss Hargrove had a bit of trouble with the creek crossing. She spent the night at my cabin while we waited out the storm. If Martha thought this arrangement improper, she gave no indication. Well, I'm grateful you were there to help. Will you stay for lunch? It's the least I can offer." Gabriel shook his head. "Much obliged, but I should get back. Got cattle to check after that storm." He turned to Lucinda. "Miss Hargrove, it was a pleasure meeting you despite the circumstances." "The pleasure was mine, Mr. Wright. I can't thank you enough." Something passed between them in that moment, an unspoken connection that Lucinda couldn't quite define. Then Gabriel nodded, replaced his hat, and was gone, the bell jingling as the door closed behind him. Martha watched Lucinda's gaze follow the cowboy. "Gabe Wright's a good man," she said thoughtfully. "One of the finest in these parts, though he keeps to himself mostly. Lost his wife in childbirth before he came west, from what I understand." Lucinda felt a pang of sympathy for the quiet cowboy. "He was very kind to me." "Come, dear," Martha said, taking Lucinda's arm. "Let's get you settled. You must be exhausted, and I want to hear all about your journey." The days that followed were busy ones as Lucinda adjusted to life in Silver Creek. Her aunt's home above the store was comfortable, if modest, and Martha herself proved to be warm and welcoming. She introduced Lucinda to the townspeople and helped her learn the workings of the store, where Lucinda began assisting. True to Gabriel's prediction, when Martha mentioned to the town council that her niece was a trained teacher, they expressed immediate interest. The current school teacher, Mrs. Winters, was expecting a child and had announced her intention to retire at the end of the term in June. It would be perfect timing, Martha told Lucinda over dinner one evening in late April. "You could start with the new term in September. The pay isn't much, but combined with what you earn helping me at the store, you'd be comfortable enough." "It sounds ideal," Lucinda agreed, pleased at the prospect. "I've always wanted to teach." "You'd be good at it," Martha said confidently. "You've got patience and a quick mind. The children would take to you." As April turned to May, Lucinda settled into a routine. Mornings and early afternoons were spent helping in the store, while later afternoons often found her at the schoolhouse with Mrs. Winters, learning about her prospective pupils and the curriculum. She made friends among the townspeople, particularly Grace Turner, the young wife of the blacksmith, and Sophia Miller, who ran the small restaurant on the main street. Both women were close to Lucinda's age of 24 and welcomed her warmly into their circle. Yet despite her growing contentment with life in Silver Creek, Lucinda often found her thoughts straying to a certain cabin and its owner. She had not seen Gabriel Wright since the day he brought her to town, though she occasionally heard his name mentioned, usually in tones of respect, sometimes with curiosity about his solitary ways. "Does Mr. Wright come to town often?" she asked her aunt one day, trying to sound casual. Martha gave her a knowing look. "Every few weeks for supplies. He's due in soon, I'd imagine." Sure enough, the following Saturday, the store's bell jingled and Gabriel Wright stepped inside. His eyes found Lucinda immediately where she stood arranging bolts of fabric, and that same expression she remembered crossed his face as if he were seeing something remarkable. "Miss Hargrove," he said, removing his hat. "You're looking well, Mr. Wright. It's good to see you." She was dismayed to find her heart beating faster. "How are your cattle faring after the storm?" Well enough, lost a few calves, but that's ranching. He shifted his weight, seeming uncharacteristically unsure of himself. And you, settling in all right? Yes, quite well. In fact, I may be taking over as the schoolteacher come fall. His face brightened. That's so, I thought you might. Town's lucky to have you. Martha approached then, greeting Gabriel warmly and asking after his needs. As he listed the supplies he required, Lucinda returned to her work, though she was acutely aware of his presence. When their eyes occasionally met across the store, she felt a curious flutter in her chest. As Gabriel completed his transaction, he hesitated, then turned to Lucinda. Miss Hargrove, there's a social at the church next Saturday evening, a spring celebration of sorts. I wondered if you might consider attending. With me. The invitation caught Lucinda by surprise. She glanced at her aunt, who was suddenly very interested in rearranging items on a nearby shelf. I would be delighted, Mr. Wright, she heard herself say. His smile transformed his face. I'll call for you at 6, then. After he left, Martha approached with a gentle smile. Gabe Wright doesn't attend many socials. In fact, I can't recall the last time he asked anyone to accompany him. I'm sure he's just being kind, Lucinda said, though she felt a flutter of pleasure at the thought that it might be more. The week passed slowly, each day bringing the social and seeing Gabriel again closer. Lucinda found herself paying more attention to her appearance and even splurged on fabric for a new dress, which she and Martha worked on in the evenings. Blue suits you, Martha observed as Lucinda tried on the completed dress the night before the social. Brings out the color in your eyes. Lucinda smoothed the fabric self-consciously. Do you think it's too fine? I don't want to appear overdressed. Nonsense. You look beautiful and there's nothing wrong with making an effort for a special occasion. Martha's eyes twinkled. Or for a special someone. Aunt Martha. It's merely a social gathering. Martha said, unconvinced. Just remember, my dear, that Gabriel Wright isn't a man to trifle with. If he's showing interest, it's genuine. Lucinda thought of Gabriel's words when they first met, you look like the rest of my life, and wondered if they had been more than a kind pleasantry after all. Saturday evening arrived clear and mild, perfect for the outdoor gathering planned in the churchyard. Lucinda spent extra time with her hair, arranging it in a becoming style with soft curls framing her face. The new dress fit perfectly, its blue fabric complementing her fair complexion. At precisely 6 o'clock, there was a knock at the door. Martha answered it, ushering Gabriel inside. Lucinda descended the stairs from the living quarters above and had the satisfaction of seeing Gabriel's eyes widen appreciatively. He had made an effort himself, she noted. His dark hair was neatly combed, and he wore a clean white shirt under a dark vest and jacket. His usual worn boots had been replaced with polished ones. Miss Hargrove, he said, his voice slightly husky, you look beautiful. Thank you, Mr. Wright, you're quite handsome yourself. Martha cleared her throat, reminding them of her presence. You two had best be going. The social will be starting soon. Gabriel offered Lucinda his arm, and they walked the short distance to the church. The yard had been transformed with lanterns strung between trees, tables laden with food, and an area cleared for dancing where several musicians were tuning their instruments. It's lovely, Lucinda said, taking in the festive scene. Not as lovely as my companion, Gabriel replied, his eyes on her rather than the decorations. The evening passed in a pleasant blur. Lucinda was introduced to people she hadn't yet met in town, shared a delicious meal of community-provided dishes, and even allowed Gabriel to lead her in a dance when the music began. He moved with surprising grace for a man who spent his days on horseback, and the warmth of his hand at her waist sent a thrill through her. You dance well, Mr. Wright, she observed as they circled the makeshift dance floor. Had some practice in my younger days, he admitted. Though it's been a while. As the evening progressed, they found a quieter spot at the edge of the festivities. The conversation flowed easily between them, touching on books they had read, places they had seen, and their thoughts on everything from politics to poetry. You surprise me, Mr. Right, Lucinda said at one point. I wouldn't have expected a rancher to be so well versed in literature. Long winter nights leave plenty of time for reading, he explained, and please call me Gabriel or Gabe if you prefer. Gabriel, she tested the name. Then you must call me Lucinda. His smile warmed her. Lucinda, it suits you. As the evening drew to a close, Gabriel walked Lucinda back to her aunt's store. They strolled slowly, neither seeming eager for the night to end. I had a wonderful time, Lucinda said as they reached the door. As did I. Gabriel hesitated, then asked, would you consider riding out to my ranch tomorrow? I could show you the place, and we could have a picnic lunch if the weather holds. I'd like that very much. His smile was boyish in its pleasure. I'll come for you around 10 then. He took her hand and with old-fashioned courtesy raised it to his lips. The gentle pressure of his kiss sent warmth spreading up her arm. Good night, Lucinda, he said softly. Good night, Gabriel. Inside, Martha was waiting up, pretending to read but clearly curious. Did you enjoy yourself? She asked innocently. Very much, Lucinda admitted. Gabriel has invited me to visit his ranch tomorrow. Martha nodded approvingly. It's good to see him taking an interest. That man's been alone too long. Aunt Martha, we've only just met. It's far too soon to speak of. Interests? Is it? Martha removed her spectacles. Sometimes the heart knows quickly what the head takes time to accept. Lucinda thought of the strange connection she had felt with Gabriel from their first meeting. Could her aunt be right? The following day dawned clear and warm. Lucinda dressed in a practical riding skirt and jacket, her anticipation growing as the appointed hour approached. Gabriel arrived promptly, leading a gentle mare for Lucinda alongside his own mount. She's called Daisy, he explained as he helped Lucinda into the saddle. Steady as they come. She'll take good care of you. The ride to Gabriel's ranch took about an hour, during which they talked easily or rode in comfortable silence, enjoying the beauty of the landscape. As they approached his property, Gabriel pointed out landmarks and boundaries with evident pride. It's not the biggest spread, he admitted, but the water's good and the grazing land is rich. I've been adding to it bit by bit. They rode past grazing cattle, their coats glossy in the spring sunshine. A few cowboys tipped their hats as they passed, eyeing Lucinda with undisguised curiosity. Gabriel's cabin looked much as she remembered it, though in daylight she could better appreciate the care that had gone into its construction and the surrounding buildings. You've built something wonderful here, she told him sincerely as he helped her dismount. His eyes held hers for a moment longer than necessary. It's been lonely work at times. He showed her around the property, the barn with its neat stalls, the corrals where young horses were being trained, the vegetated garden he maintained behind the cabin. Inside, she noticed details she had missed during her previous stay. Bookshelves filled with well-read volumes, a small piano in one corner, photographs in simple frames. You play? She asked, gesturing to the piano. Not well, but it passes the time. Do you? Yes, I had lessons as a girl. She smiled at the instrument. I've missed playing since coming west. Please, he said, gesturing to the bench. I'd love to hear you. Feeling slightly self-conscious, Lucinda sat and played a simple melody she remembered. The piano was slightly out of tune but serviceable. When she finished, she looked up to find Gabriel watching her with an expression that made her heart skip. Beautiful, he said softly, and she knew he meant more than just the music. They shared the picnic lunch. Gabriel had prepared cold chicken, bread, cheese, and early strawberries from his garden. Sitting on a blanket beneath a large oak tree, with the ranch spread before them and the mountains in the distance, Lucinda felt a sense of peace she hadn't experienced in a long time. Tell me about your wife, she said suddenly, then immediately regretted the question when she saw pain flash across Gabriel's face. I'm sorry, that was terribly forward of me. No, it's all right. He was quiet for a moment. Her name was Rebecca. We married young. I was 20, she was 18. I was preparing to join the Union Army when we discovered she was expecting. I delayed enlisting to be with her, but there were complications. We lost both her and the baby. His voice was steady, but Lucinda could hear the old grief in it. That was 15 years ago now. I'm so sorry, Lucinda said softly, reaching to touch his hand. He turned his palm up, grasping her fingers gently. I carried that grief for a long time, still do in some ways, but life goes on. Has to. They sat in silence for a moment, hands still joined. Then Gabriel seemed to shake off the melancholy. What about you? No suitors left behind in Boston, Lucinda smiled ruefully. There was someone once. Richard Thornton, son of my father's business partner. It was assumed we would marry, but she shrugged. He wanted a different kind of wife than I was prepared to be. When my father's business failed, Richard's interest waned remarkably quickly. His loss, Gabriel said firmly, and perhaps my gain. The simple statement hung in the air between them, full of possibility. Lucinda felt her cheeks warm, but she didn't look away from Gabriel's steady gaze. Perhaps, she agreed softly. The remainder of the afternoon passed pleasantly as Gabriel showed her more of his land. As the sun began its descent, they reluctantly headed back toward town. Gabriel rode close beside her, their conversation flowing easily. "Will you be at church tomorrow?" he asked as Silver Creek came into view. "Yes, Aunt Martha and I attend regularly." "May I sit with you?" "I'd like that," Lucinda said, pleased at the prospect of seeing him again so soon. At the store, Gabriel helped her dismount, his hands lingering at her waist a moment longer than necessary. "Thank you for coming today," he said. "It meant a great deal to me." "I enjoyed every moment," Lucinda replied honestly. That night, lying in bed, Lucinda found herself thinking of Gabriel, his gentle strength, his quiet humor, the way his eyes crinkled when he smiled. It was too soon to name what she was feeling, but she recognized it was something significant, something with the potential to change her life entirely. The following weeks saw Gabriel becoming a regular visitor to the Hargrove home. He escorted Lucinda to church each Sunday, joined them for dinner several times a week, and frequently invited Lucinda for rides around the countryside. The townsfolk noted their growing attachment with approval. Gabriel was well respected, and they were pleased to see him emerging from his self-imposed solitude. In late May, Gabriel invited Lucinda to attend a cattle auction in the nearby town of Pine Ridge. "It would mean an overnight stay," he explained, somewhat hesitantly. "But your aunt could accompany us, of course, for propriety's sake." "That would be lovely," Lucinda said, genuinely interested in seeing more of Gabriel's world. Martha, however, had other ideas. "I'm too old for such journeys," she declared, though her eyes twinkled mischievously. "But my friend Widow Jenkins would be happy to chaperone. She has family in Pine Ridge she's been meaning to visit, and so it was arranged." The Widow Jenkins, a formidable lady of 60 with sharp eyes and a sharper tongue, accompanied them on the journey. She kept a respectable distance during the auction itself, allowing Gabriel to explain the proceedings to Lucinda, but maintained a watchful presence during meals and at the small hotel where they stayed. Lucinda found the auction fascinating, the rapid-fire speech of the auctioneer, the subtle signals buyers used to place their bids, the obvious knowledge Gabriel displayed as he evaluated the cattle. He purchased several fine breeding heifers, clearly pleased with his acquisitions. "You have a good eye," Lucinda observed as they watched the animals being loaded for transport back to his ranch. "Years of practice," he replied modestly. "My father raised horses back in Pennsylvania. I learned to judge livestock at his knee." "Do you miss it? Pennsylvania, I mean." Gabriel considered the question. "Sometimes I miss the green of it, especially in winter when everything here is brown or white, but this land." He gestured to the vast open country surrounding them. "It offers a freedom I never found back east." "I think I understand," Lucinda said. "There's something about the vastness that makes one feel both small and significant at the same time." Gabriel looked at her with appreciation. "That's it exactly. You have a way with words, Lucinda. A necessary quality in a teacher, I suppose." "Speaking of which, have you heard anything official about the position?" "Yes, the town council confirmed it yesterday. I'll begin in September when the new term starts." Gabriel's smile was warm. "Congratulations, you'll be wonderful with the children." That evening, after dinner at the hotel, the Widow Jenkins announced her intention to retire early, fixing Gabriel with a stern look. "I trust you two will maintain all proper decorum in my absence." "Yes, madam," Gabriel assured her, though his eyes held a hint of amusement. They sat in the hotel's small parlor, a respectable distance apart on a horsehair sofa. The room was empty save for them, but the door remained open to the lobby where the hotel clerk kept a disinterested watch. "Lucinda," Gabriel began, his voice serious. "These past weeks have been the happiest I've known in many years." Her heart quickened. "For me as well. I know it hasn't been long, but I feel as though I've known you much longer." He took her hand in his. "That day by the creek, when I said you looked like the rest of my life, I meant it, though I had no right to say such a thing to a stranger." It was a rather forward greeting, Lucinda acknowledged with a small smile. "It was the truth," Gabriel said simply. "I took one look at you, covered in mud as you were, and something in me recognized you, as if my heart had been waiting for you without my knowing it." Lucinda's breath caught. "Gabriel, I'm not asking for anything now," he continued hastily. "It's too soon, I know that. I just wanted you to understand what these weeks have meant to me and what you have come to mean to me." Lucinda squeezed his hand. "I feel it too," she admitted softly. "This connection between us, I've never experienced anything like it." Gabriel's eyes darkened with emotion. He raised her hand to his lips, pressing a fervent kiss to her knuckles. "That's enough for now," he said, "to know that you feel it too." They sat in companionable silence for a time, hands still joined, both aware that something significant had shifted between them. The return journey to Silver Creek the following day was filled with a new awareness. Every glance, every casual touch seemed charged with meaning. Even the widow Jenkins noticed, commenting dryly to Lucinda when Gabriel was out of earshot, "That man is smitten with you, my dear." And unless I miss my guess, the feeling is mutual. Lucinda couldn't deny it. What had begun as gratitude and friendship had blossomed into something deeper, something with the potential to last a lifetime. It both thrilled and frightened her how quickly her feelings had developed. June brought warm days and the end of the school term. Lucinda began spending more time at the schoolhouse, preparing for her first term as teacher. She repainted the walls with help from Gabriel and several townsmen, organized books and supplies, and created lesson plans for students ranging from 6 to 16 years of age. Gabriel proved an unexpected source of support, building new bookshelves for the classroom and repairing broken desks. "You're very handy," Lucinda observed one afternoon as they worked together. "Ranch life teaches you to fix things yourself or do without," he replied, hammering a loose board back into place. "Though I admit I'm enjoying this project more than most, because you're helping the community." His eyes met hers. "Because I'm helping you." Such moments of candor were becoming more frequent between them. Gabriel was not a man given to flowery speeches, but when he did speak of his feelings, it was with a directness that left Lucinda in no doubt of his sincerity. July brought scorching heat and the town's Independence Day celebration. The entire community gathered for a picnic, games, and fireworks. Gabriel and Lucinda spent the day together, participating in the festivities and enjoying the communal spirit of the occasion. As dusk fell and the fireworks began, they found a quiet spot on a small hill overlooking the town. Gabriel spread his coat on the ground for them to sit on, and they watched as the night sky bloomed with color. "Beautiful," Lucinda murmured as a particularly spectacular burst of gold and red illuminated the darkness. "Yes," Gabriel agreed, though when she glanced at him, she found him looking at her rather than the sky. In the intermittent glow of the fireworks, his face was a study in light and shadow, his eyes intent on hers. Slowly, giving her every opportunity to pull away, he leaned toward her. Lucinda's heart raced as she met him halfway, their lips connecting in a gentle, questioning kiss. It was brief but perfect, a promise of deeper feelings, of possibilities yet to be explored. When they parted, Gabriel's expression was one of wonder and tenderness. "I've wanted to do that since the day I met you," he confessed, "even with the mud." Lucinda teased, though her voice trembled slightly, especially with the mud. His smile was tender as he tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. "You were the most beautiful thing I'd ever seen." They watched the remainder of the fireworks display with Lucinda nestled against Gabriel's side, his arm around her shoulders. It felt right, sitting with him beneath the star-studded sky, as if she had found her place in the world. August brought the cattle drive season, and Gabriel was forced to be away for nearly 2 weeks, taking his herd to market in Denver. The separation was difficult for both of them, their feelings having grown steadily stronger through the summer months. "I'll miss you," Lucinda said as they said goodbye the evening before his departure. Not half as much as I'll miss you, Gabriel replied, holding her hands tightly in his, but I'll be back before you know it. Be careful, she urged. I've heard cattle drives can be dangerous. I've been doing this for years, he reassured her, and I have extra motivation to return safely this time. Their parting kiss was bittersweet, lingering with the promise of reunion. As Gabriel rode away, Lucinda felt as though a piece of her heart went with him. The days of his absence dragged by, despite Lucinda's busy schedule preparing for the school term. She found herself watching the road for any sign of riders, hoping each time it might be Gabriel returning early. Martha observed her niece's distraction with knowing eyes. It's hard loving a rancher, she said one evening as they sat on the porch. The work takes them away sometimes when you need them most, but Gabriel Wright is worth waiting for. I never said I loved him, Lucinda protested weakly. Martha smiled. You didn't have to, dear. It's written all over your face. Was it love? Lucinda pondered the question as she lay in bed that night. She had thought herself in love with Richard back in Boston, but that pale emotion bore no resemblance to what she felt for Gabriel. This was deeper, stronger a feeling that seemed to grow from her very core. Yes, she realized with a mixture of joy and trepidation. She loved Gabriel Wright. The question now was what to do about it. Her answer came the day Gabriel returned, dusty and tired from the trail, but with his eyes lighting up at the sight of her waiting on the porch of her aunt's store. He dismounted in one fluid motion and strode toward her, propriety forgotten as he swept her into his arms. Lucinda, he breathed, holding her as if he might never let go. God, I've missed you. Welcome home, she whispered, the words carrying more meaning than she could express. Later, after he had cleaned up and joined them for dinner, Gabriel asked Lucinda to walk with him. They strolled through the quiet town as the sun set, eventually finding themselves at the small park near the church. I did a lot of thinking on the trail, Gabriel said as they sat on a bench beneath a large oak tree. About my life, my future, our future if you'll have me. Lucinda's heart seemed to stop, then race ahead. Gabriel, he took her hands in his expression serious yet tender. I love you, Lucinda. I think I have since the moment I saw you by that creek. I know it hasn't been long, but some things a man just knows in his soul. Tears pricked at Lucinda's eyes. I love you too, she said, her voice strong and sure. Gabriel's face lit with joy. He reached into his pocket and withdrew a small velvet box. Then would you do me the honor of becoming my wife, of building a life with me at the ranch? It won't always be easy, but I swear I'll spend every day trying to make you happy. He opened the box to reveal a delicate gold ring with a small diamond that caught the last rays of the setting sun. It was my mother's, he explained. I had it sized for you in Denver. Yes, Lucinda said without hesitation, her heart too full for more words. Gabriel slipped the ring onto her finger, then cupped her face in his hands and kissed her with all the love and promise of their future together. They decided on a September wedding, after the school term began, but before the harsh winter weather set in. Martha was overjoyed at the news, immediately throwing herself into wedding preparations. I knew from the beginning you two were meant for each other, she declared. A blind person could see it. The town shared in their happiness, with congratulations pouring in from all sides. Gabriel began making improvements to the ranch house, adding a larger kitchen and a second bedroom for the future, he said with a meaningful look that made Lucinda blush. As the wedding day approached, Lucinda divided her time between teaching and preparing for her new life as Mrs. Gabriel Wright. The school children adored their new teacher, and she found the work fulfilling in ways she had only imagined. Gabriel came to town as often as his ranch duties allowed, sometimes staying for dinner, other times just stopping by the schoolhouse to leave wildflowers on her desk. Each visit, each small gesture, deepened Lucinda's certainty that she had found her true partner in life. The wedding day dawned clear and crisp, with the aspens in the hills beginning to turn golden. The church was decorated with autumn flowers and ribbons, and it seemed the entire town had turned out for the occasion. Lucinda wore a gown of ivory satin that Martha had helped her make, with lace at the collar and cuffs that had once adorned her mother's wedding dress. Her hair was arranged in soft curls, with small white flowers woven through the chestnut strands. Gabriel waited at the altar, more handsome than ever in a new black suit, his eyes never leaving Lucinda as she walked down the aisle on the arm of Martha's brother, who had come from Denver for the occasion. The ceremony was simple but heartfelt. When Gabriel recited his vows, his voice was steady and sure, his eyes conveying even more than his words. Lucinda's own voice trembled slightly with emotion as she promised to love and cherish him for all her days. "I now pronounce you husband and wife," the minister declared. "You may kiss your bride." Gabriel's kiss was tender yet passionate, a promise of the life they would build together. The church erupted in applause as they turned to face their friends and neighbors as Mr. and Mrs. Wright. The celebration afterward was joyous music and dancing, food and laughter filling the church hall until late in the evening. As the festivities wound down, Gabriel led his bride to the waiting wagon that would take them to the ranch, their home now. "Happy, Mrs. Wright?" he asked as he helped her up to the seat. "Completely, Mr. Wright," she assured him, leaning into his solid warmth as they began the journey to their future. The ranch house welcomed them with lamplight glowing in the windows, courtesy of Gabriel's foreman, who had gone ahead to prepare for their arrival. Inside, the familiar main room had been transformed with new curtains. Lucinda had made comfortable furniture Gabriel had ordered from Denver, and a vase of wildflowers on the table. "Welcome home," Gabriel said softly, lifting Lucinda into his arms to carry her across the threshold. Their life together began in earnest days filled with work and purpose, evenings spent in companionable togetherness. Lucinda balanced her teaching duties with learning to be a rancher's wife. Gabriel supported her career wholeheartedly, often riding into town with her in the mornings before continuing on to his own business. The townspeople quickly adapted to seeing them as a unit, the respected rancher and the beloved schoolteacher. If anyone thought it unusual for a married woman to continue teaching, they kept such opinions to themselves, recognizing the special partnership the Wrights had formed. Winter brought heavy snows that sometimes made the journey to town impossible. On such days, Lucinda remained at the ranch, using the time to catch up on grading or plan lessons. She discovered unexpected joy in these snow-bound days, reading by the fire while Gabriel worked on ranch accounts, cooking together in the warm kitchen, talking long into the night about everything and nothing. Spring arrived with new life on the ranch, calves in the pastures, wildflowers dotting the prairie, and the news that Lucinda was expecting their first child. "A baby," Gabriel said in wonder when she told him, his hand gentle on her still flat stomach. "Our baby." "Due in November," Lucinda confirmed, her own joy mingled with natural apprehension. Gabriel's expression sobered, and she knew he was thinking of Rebecca and the child they had lost. "It will be different this time," she assured him, covering his hand with her own. "Doctor Morgan says I'm in excellent health." "I'll make sure of it," Gabriel vowed. "You and our child will want for nothing." As Lucinda's pregnancy progressed, Gabriel's protective instincts intensified. He insisted on driving her to and from school each day, hired additional help for the ranch so he could be more available, and even arranged for a young woman from town to assist with household chores. "You're spoiling me," Lucinda protested mildly as he fluffed pillows behind her back one evening. "Getting what you deserve," he corrected with a tender smile. "Besides, I'm making up for lost time. I should have been doing this from the beginning." When the new school term began in September, Lucinda reluctantly took a leave of absence. Her growing condition made the daily journey increasingly uncomfortable, and standing before a classroom of energetic children taxed her stamina. "It's only temporary," Gabriel assured her, seeing her disappointment. "You'll be back terrorizing the youth of Silver Creek before you know it." "I don't terrorize them," Lucinda objected, laughing despite herself. "Well, perhaps Jimmy Wilson occasionally." The autumn days passed peacefully as they prepared for the baby's arrival. Gabriel built a cradle with his own hands, carving delicate patterns into the wood. Lucinda sewed tiny garments, each stitch filled with love and anticipation. Martha visited often, bringing baby quilts and advice in equal measure, November brought early snows and with them the birth of their daughter. The labor was long but uncomplicated with Martha and Dr. Morgan in attendance. Gabriel paced outside until the doctor finally admitted him to meet his child. "She's perfect," Lucinda said tiredly, cradling the small bundle with wisps of dark hair like her father's. Gabriel's eyes filled with tears as he gazed at his wife and daughter. "Like her mother," he said, his voice rough with emotion. He sat carefully on the edge of the bed, wrapping an arm around Lucinda's shoulders. What shall we call her? They had discussed names but made no final decision. Now, looking at the tiny face, Lucinda knew. "Rebecca," she said softly. "Rebecca Martha Wright." Gabriel's breath caught. "Are you sure?" "Very sure. A way to honor both the past and present." His kiss was gentle with gratitude and love. "Rebecca it is." The winter of 1879-1880 was one of contentment for the Wright family. Rebecca thrived, growing stronger each day. Gabriel doted on his daughter, often carrying her around the ranch bundled against the cold, pointing out cattle and horses to her uncomprehending but attentive gaze. Lucinda recovered quickly from the birth, and soon was managing both household and baby with calm efficiency. In quiet moments, she sometimes marveled at how completely her life had changed in less than 2 years. From the mud-covered woman rescued from a creek to wife, mother, and respected community member, it seemed almost like a dream. Yet it was wonderfully real, the solid presence of Gabriel beside her each night, the warm weight of Rebecca in her arms, the sense of purpose and belonging that filled her days. She had found her place in this wild, beautiful land, with a man whose love had transformed her life. Spring arrived, bringing with it Rebecca's increasing mobility and Lucinda's return to teaching, now with her daughter in tow. The school board had no objections to the baby's presence, and the children delighted in their newest classmate. Gabriel continued to expand the ranch, purchasing additional land and increasing his herd. His success allowed them comforts they might not otherwise have enjoyed, but both maintained the simple lifestyle they preferred. Their greatest wealth, they agreed, was in their family and community. As Rebecca's first birthday approached, Gabriel surprised Lucinda with news that he had purchased the adjacent property, which included a small but lovely house. "For Martha," he explained, "if she wants it." "She mentioned selling the store and retiring, but I know she'd miss you and Rebecca if she moved to Denver with her brother." Lucinda embraced him, touched by his thoughtfulness. "She'll be overjoyed, but are you sure we can afford it?" "The cattle drive this year was particularly profitable," Gabriel assured her, "and family is worth every penny." Martha accepted their offer with tears of gratitude, making plans to move after the Christmas holidays. Having her nearby would be a blessing, especially with the news Lucinda had recently confirmed but not yet shared with Gabriel. She chose a special moment to tell him a crisp November evening as they sat on the porch watching the sunset, Rebecca already asleep inside. "Do you remember what you said to me when we first met?" she asked, leaning against his shoulder. Gabriel chuckled. "That you looked like the rest of my life, even covered in mud, not my smoothest moment." "It was perfect," Lucinda disagreed, "and prophetic, it seems." She took his hand and placed it on her stomach. "We're going to have another baby, Gabriel, in late spring." His face lit with joy as he gathered her close. "Truly, oh Lucinda, are you happy?" "Beyond words," he assured her, kissing her tenderly. "Our family is growing, our land is prospering. What more could a man ask for?" "Nothing," Lucinda agreed, nestling closer in his embrace. "We have everything that matters." They sat together in the gathering dusk, watching as stars appeared one by one in the vast Colorado sky. From muddy beginnings had come this beautiful life, a testament to love's ability to recognize what truly matters, even in the most unlikely circumstances. As if reading her thoughts, Gabriel tightened his arm around her shoulders. "Best day of my life," he murmured, "when I found you covered in mud by that creek." "Best day of mine too," Lucinda agreed, "when a handsome cowboy told me I looked like the rest of his life." And so it had proven to be a life built on love, respect, and shared dreams, unfolding day by day beneath the wide western sky. A life that had begun with an unexpected meeting and a bold declaration that had, against all odds, come gloriously true.